Hi, everybody. I'm Courtney Hornsby, and this is Heidi Jo Lopez's podcast, Between the Chapters Family Coffee and Conversations. And we are extremely excited to welcome our special guest, Michelle Bader Ebersole. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. I have our first question for you. Can you
Oh,
please tell our listeners a little bit about your life right now, your marriage, family, your newest book?
all right. Well, thank you guys so much for having me here today. I'm so excited to be here. So that's kind of a big question, but I'll try to narrow it down because
In
there's a lot
30
of years.
seconds. No, I'm just
Yeah.
30
kidding.
seconds telling you about all of my 40. Okay. So, no, so currently I live in Ridgefield, Washington, and with my husband Joel, and I'm about to be an empty nester. My three kids
Aw.
are 18, 20, and 22. One of them is working right now at a conference center, and then the other two are about to go to college. So it's a whole new transition. One's going to Portland
Yeah.
Bible College. And one to Corbin University. So about to be an empty nester. I was widowed 6 years ago in 2020 to my husband Luke, and it's been quite a journey, which I know we're going to get into. And then Joel and I were married about 3 years ago, and so we're in that whole like kind of newlywed, blending families, and so kind of excited to be empty nesters because we've never had that yet. And the most recent book I wrote is called Widow Goals: Steps to Finding Peace When You Lose Your Spouse, and it came from everything I wish I would have known when I was
Mm.
a new widow. And it's a biblically based book where I have verses at the beginning of every chapter. And it's basically 30 goals that someone who's widowed could take in any order. And when I say widow, that also means widower, just basically anybody widowed, and could say, okay, I want to work on that today. Like, get out of bed. That's usually the first thing we're working on. Call on your tribe, focus on eternity. We just have different things. And so that book is meant to be an easy read for people to just pick a chapter and say, that's what I need help with. But I've also had people who aren't widowed. They've read the book and said it's helped them as well because most of it you can apply to any kind of grief. So that's a little bit about me and my book, just the short version.
Yeah, that is the short version because I've heard a lot of your story, which is amazing. And I know it's been super inspiring to so many women. And so thank you for that in advance.
You're
Um,
welcome.
I would like you to share a little bit about your ministry and your walk you've been on, as much as you feel Holy Spirit leading you to
Okay.
do so.
Yeah, this is the long story, but basically, which I have to explain the backstory to get to the ministry.
Mhm.
So my husband Luke and I were married when he was 25 and I was 24, and life was amazing and good. He was healthy, strong. Like I knew him from high school. He was like all-star athlete. And fast forward until we got married, he found a lump in his ankle and found out it was a very rare bone cancer, mesenchymal chondrosarcoma, and started doing chemotherapy. I mean, our lives were completely shattered and rocked. Oh, and we had just found out we were pregnant as well. So there's a lot going on our first year of marriage. And he went on to have his leg amputated, which is what we considered his last cancer-free day for about 13 years. And during that 13 years, we also had two more kids. And he was also sick. He never really fully recovered. The chemo kind of killed his immune system. And then he had diabetes, cirrhosis, like he had so many other things. So it was a really hard life. He was in and out of the hospital for 13 more years after that. Then the cancer came back in his lungs. And then this time it was terminal. And we had to sit our kids down, who I think they were like 9, 11, and 13, somewhere around there when he first had his cancer come back. They already knew all about his cancer, obviously, because his leg was amputated and they knew about that. And also, they'd all read my first book, Cancer Can't Crush Us. And so they had kind of, experienced that through reading it and knowing, about his journey. So we had a really great attitude, like, we're going to do this again. He didn't want to do chemo again, but there wasn't any other option. So went through treatment for about another 3-ish years. And he passed away on May 23rd, 2020. And my kids then were 12, 14, and 15. Really hard ages, anyways. And I was suddenly widowed. Even though I knew it was coming, it was still devastating. And trying to navigate as a 41-year-old widow and figure out like how to be a solo parent and all of these things, it was super difficult. And so, what I did was I reached out to all the churches in my area, and there was not one widow support group. There was nothing.
Wow.
which I later learned how that is so opposite of what God wants because God mentions widows
Right.
103 times in the Bible.
Yeah,
Yet
absolutely.
so few churches have anything to support them. So I was like, what? So in the beginning, I didn't have the energy to start a group, but about a year, I would say about a year after Luke died, I started a group and I started my nonprofit, which is called Widow Goals. And our whole motto is widows helping widows not only survive, but thrive. And just started gathering people in my local area. And it kind of grew from there. I also started that first year, maybe the next year, a widow's retreat. And we've now done three. We're about to do the fourth in October.
Okay.
And through that, I met a lot of friends who said, "Hey, I want to do this. How do I become a Widow Goals leader?" So I trained them. And now we have them literally all over the world. In fact, today, because I believe today is tomorrow in Australia, and Thursday in Australia, we're launching our first group in Australia.
Oh,
Oh my gosh,
wow.
that's amazing.
Yeah, she found me on Facebook and wanted to know the training, so I taught her. Just connected with a woman in New Zealand a couple days ago who is now going to be our worship leader for our retreat in Dallas.
Oh,
Oh,
wow.
God.
Amazing. I mean, there's so
That's
many things,
amazing.
yeah, that God has done. It's crazy. And so I had started this ministry. At the same time, I started a podcast, Widow Too Soon. Actually, that was before. That was 11 months into my journey. I started that with a widower. So we'd have like the widow perspective and a widower.
Right.
He had little kids. I had teenagers. So the first 3 years, we basically just talked through our journeys. And then he left the podcast, and then it became more of an interview podcast where I interview widows from all over the world and hear their stories and how God helped them through it. And so that's kind of how this ministry was born. I also started TikTok doing a channel called Widow Goals, and I found all these widows out there who wanted support. And I was like, I had no idea it's like this invisible world I didn't know about. When I thought widow, I thought like 70 or 80,
Right.
someone like much older. And so I found there was a whole world of widows my age and younger. And, it
Wow.
just, I have widow friends that are in their 20s, just it affects a lot of people. And so I also created my book that I was sharing about. I started it actually 6 months after Luke died. I wrote 3 chapters,
Mhm.
but it was not time to finish it.
Yeah.
I knew nothing compared to later on. I realized, okay, so May 23rd of 25, it was going to be the 5-year anniversary of Luke's death. And I was like, I want to get it done and launch it on that day. And so that became my mission. I wrote it in like 4 months, wrote the rest of the book, and had an amazing launch with all these widows. And it was just beautiful. And then from that, I created a workbook and a leader's guide. And my goal is to get that into churches
Yeah.
that don't have support. And so I even have a page that has a video that says, just share this with your pastor. And I always tell people, just ask your pastor, how do we support widows? And wait for an
Yeah.
answer. And hopefully you have something that includes like going out and helping them. Like we have a day, I think we do it twice a year at our church, where we go out and we, help with, yard work or, different things that people have submitted that they need help with. And then having some kind of support group. So that's a little bit about how I got to where I am today. In October, we're doing our next retreat in Dallas, and it's just been amazing. Like I said, we just found that New Zealand. Um, that how that happened is I posted on my personal page and then just cross posted it to my widow page that has over 13,000 people. And this woman just said, "Hey, if you get in a bind, let me know. I'll come from New Zealand." And I was like, "Are you
Wow.
serious?" She said, "Yes." So then we started talking and we did 2 Zoom calls with the leaders and everything. And she just bought her ticket and she's coming.
Wow. That is
She's,
amazing.
yeah, she said, I can't find any widow support in my entire country. I don't know,
Wow.
we don't have anything. So I'm hoping she'll also learn how to be a leader and take
Yeah.
that back to New Zealand as well. And so she's part of our leadership team and she's flying in October to lead worship. And yeah, so it's been an amazing journey. Just letting God use what I've been through to help other people. Before this, I had my master's in teaching. I mean, I still have it, but I don't currently teach in the classroom. I teach in much different ways. I also do grief coaching for widows, and I've created a course for widows, and I'm teaching them, in different ways. And I still am currently doing my Widowed Too Soon podcast, as well as launching a new one soon. So, yeah, it's totally like, God healed me, and so I want to show others. And the
Yeah.
reason Mark, my first co-host, and I, why we started the podcast is because we were in all these Facebook groups, and It was called Young and Widowed with Children, the one we were in, and it was so hopeless. And we're like, these people need Jesus. We need to start a podcast. And as far as I know, it's still the only Christian widow podcast that there is. There's lots, well, I wouldn't say lots, 10 to 15 widow podcasts, but they're not Christian podcasts. They point you to the mediums and all the things that we don't,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know. We've actually had several episodes, two or three, about, why we should not talk to mediums. I actually had
Oh,
a
I'm glad
woman
you did
who's
that.
Yes. Okay. A woman who is a Christian who used to be a medium, and her whole message now is sharing why it's wrong. So she came on and shared her whole testimony, how God
That's
turned her life
powerful.
around, and why we should not mess with anything like that, and even like what they do. And so that was fascinating. And so, anyways, we're trying to be a light where there's darkness, because
Yeah.
when people lose their spouse, they're desperate to talk to them again. So a lot of widows, even Christian widows,
Yeah.
they go to mediums. And I'm like, no, that's demons. Don't do
Yeah.
that.
I have a really dear friend who lost her husband, and she's a Christian. And we've even had this conversation before her husband died. But her kids are in a different place.
Yep.
And they got her all involved in that for a period of time. And it was just heart-wrenching because I
Hmm.
was just like, I watched it torture her. It was
Yep.
awful. And it's so demonic. And yeah, so I'm super glad you talked about that because it's something we're not talking enough about.
Oh, right.
So
Yes. Hmm.
we mention a lot on this show because well, this one and I have a different podcast too. Let's talk, and we talk to so many people with amazing stories and
Hmm.
who God has done amazing things. And so we're always talking about how what Satan plans for evil, God turns to amazing good. And this is
Yes.
why I love everything you're doing. Um, I was so moved. I know it's jumping down a question, but I was so moved meeting you up in Stehekin as you shared, and then talking to you and your husband on the boat a little bit, and just moved by everything you've walked through, and just the huge big step you took just because you were like, I need help. And you
Hmm.
were willing to take that step and just look at all the amazing things that God is doing with that. It's
Thank
unbelievable.
you. It is amazing when I just step back and look at that, and just, we recently, it wasn't a widow's retreat. It was just a weekend hangout. There were 11 of us. We all happened to be widowed. And I realized I was in the van with like five or six of them, and I looked around. I was like, I met every one of these women through the podcast. How crazy is that? And they're like my best friends now.
Yeah,
Like,
so cool.
just how crazy it is. Like, I'm always so thankful to live in this time with this technology.
Yeah.
I have a sticker at the bottom of my computer that says, "Go into all the world and preach the good news." This
Mhm.
is the modern way how we can do that, right? We don't have to go
Totally.
to, we do it through our podcast. And I'm so
Yeah.
thankful for technology, because I've met widows who were widowed, let's say 20 years ago, and like, we couldn't find anybody. You guys can find each other online and
Yeah.
connect and support each other. And so I feel so blessed to be alive in this time period, to be able to reach widows who don't have support. I mean, there are so many people who leave the church when they're widowed for many reasons. It's very sad. I can't remember the exact percentage, but it's a lot, because for one, you feel completely alone. Most churches are for, families and couples, and
Mhm.
you're not like the typical like single, and you don't fit in with the divorced, and there's not groups. And so a lot of people leave. And then it's just, I mean, I remember just crying and crying going to church, just watching couples together. And it was really, really
Yeah.
hard. And so, I mean, it's so important that we support these people who they don't go to church anymore. Sometimes they don't have family. Friends completely change too, especially couple
Right.
friends. Now, I
Yeah.
didn't personally experience that because Luke was always sick, so we didn't really have couple friends. But many, many of my friends have told me they don't have the same friends anymore, because it gets
Wow.
awkward when, your spouse isn't there anymore. So they lose all these friends, and so they're
Mhm.
so alone. And so I feel like it's our job to gather around them and help them. I mean, Jesus has such a heart for widows and orphans and fatherless. I remember reading the verse about God being a defender of widows and a father to
Yeah.
the fatherless. And I was like,
Mhm.
that's me and my kids. And I'm
Yeah.
so passionate about that. I remember when, deep in my grief when I read that, and I was like, that's us, And I felt so, especially those first few months, like so close to God, just on the floor crying, but yet like he cover me with the peace that passes all understanding. And that's all I want for people. I look at all these people who are not saved and are turning to all the wrong things. I'm like, you're never gonna get better. Like, unless
Yeah.
you we have lots of tools that can help you, but ultimately Jesus is the healer. Like not all these
Amen.
tools, and so it's really sad when I meet widows or anybody grieving who doesn't know how to actually be healed. And so
Yeah.
that's really my passion.
It's interesting. When I lost my mom, she went home, and Courtney's grandma. And when we lost mom, our mom was amazing. She was absolutely spectacular, and so she was a huge, huge part of our lives. And so it was like a crevasse. And I remember, and so I pray this for people in loss, widows, anybody. But
Yeah.
when I lost her, I had enough Holy Spirit wisdom, coming up in me that's to pray for myself, for God to protect me in a bubble so that I
Mm-hmm.
could grieve and not allow the enemy to attack me.
Right.
Because you're so broken in your
Oh,
deepest places of grief. But I knew I needed to grieve. Um, and I mean, obviously, I mean, we still grieve, even when years pass, you're still in a form of grieving. But that first year or two is really big. And yeah, I don't have to explain to you. But so now, because of that, if I have friends that have lost a spouse or a child or a parent or whatever, that's how I pray for them, because
yeah, it's
Lord,
good.
protect them, because
Mm.
and do not allow Satan to attack them in this place, because they're defenseless
Yep,
in so many ways.
it's true. That's a great prayer. I love that.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to shift us to the next question.
Just
Um,
keeping these line.
through huge grief or hardship, how would you encourage someone to take the next step, even when they can't see what that may be?
That's so good. We talked about that at the Water Walking Faith
Mhm.
Retreat, which is also the name of our retreat, the Widows
Yeah.
Retreat, because they said I could copy the name.
I
So,
love it.
same thing, but I think it's just about like focusing on Jesus and like, what do you have for me today? It might not even be like tomorrow, or what do you have for me the next hour? Like, what am I supposed to do? And just focusing on one little thing at a time, and not, it's too overwhelming to even think about tomorrow when you're brand new widowed or in grief or whatever. So just focusing on that, and then also finding community of people who've been through the same thing as you, and letting them be the one to tell you it's going to get better. That's all I wanted to know. I did know a few widows, and I called them all when I became widowed, please tell me it gets better,
Mm,
and they did. And so I think, again, just like focusing on the one little thing and then finding the people. So with technology, it's easy to find any kind of loss online. You could find people who, but I recommend that they're Christians also. That's the
yeah.
best. Christians who have gone through what you've been through or similar. None of us have the exact same story, but similar stories, so that you can see where they're at. Also, reading books from people who've been through things, that's huge. Just being able to look at like someone else survived this, I'm going to survive it too. I mean, that was so huge for me.
Yeah. Um, I've got a couple questions in my head, and I'm like, how do I order them? I just want to let everybody know that's listening. We are going to ask the questions and give you all the information to find out about all of these things and connect with Michelle. So I don't want you to think we're not going to talk about that if I kind of take us off a little bit. Um, so you have mentioned a few times your retreat in Dallas. Tell us the heart of that, how that came about, who and what that's reaching, and all the ins and outs of what you want to tell us on that.
Yes, yeah. So it started in 23 was our first widows retreat, and it was just short, just one night here in the Vancouver, Washington area. And most of them were podcast listeners who came. I just started talking about it
Wow.
on my podcast. People flew in from different parts of the country, and
Wow.
I was just
Cool.
shocked at people that were flying in. And that was, just a very short version of what we do now, but I'll kind of explain what we do now. It's kind of changed over the years. The second year we went to Colorado, and that was more, there were only 12 women, and it was more of like exploring nature, riding horses. Like it was so amazing. We took a self-defense class, like it was like action.
Cool.
It was
Yeah.
really cool. And I partnered with another widow to do that one. And then this fourth, well, is the third and fourth, is in Dallas at Mount Lebanon. It's a camp out there. And my goal was to make it as affordable as possible, because I remember when I was a new widow, I had zero money. There's really two kinds of widows. Either there's some that inherit a lot of money, or most of us, we don't have anything. And so that was, and we have scholarships available because I want everyone to have a chance to come. And so we found a camp that could do it pretty affordable. And what we do is we start every day with worship, and then we have a speaker, which I'm going to do the same speech I did in Stehekin about water walking faith. And then some of the other leaders are speaking. They're handpicked to speak about the theme and interweave their stories. They're all widowed as well. And I
Mhm.
mean, everybody here, like at the retreat, is widowed. It's widows helping widows. And then we will go throughout the day and we'll have breakout sessions where people
Mm,
can choose topics that they kind of like we did in Stehekin,
mhm,
topics that appeal to them. And this year, I'm doing one on trauma and how it affects the body. We're doing
mm,
one on finances, dating, solo parenting, just things that widows might want. Like some people are like, I'm not ready for dating. I'm not going to that. But there's something else that applies to them. And so those are all widows teaching those classes. Oh, fitness and how that helps, in your healing. We also do breakout sessions based on how long you've been widowed, because that's much different. And so I call them my baby widows. So I'm taking the 0 to 1 year and talking to them. And then we also do small groups. So this year
mhm.
we're really like, let's do less big things and more small so we can
Yeah,
really help them to get to know each other. And
individual.
that's based on cause of death because that is so different. Myself, like going through cancer with Luke versus a car accident, so different. And
Hmm.
so we even put them in with people that get that and understand that.
Yeah.
And then we are going to do some fun things like line dancing. That's one of
Mhm.
our favorite things. One of my widow girls, she's teaching it. We're also doing what we call widow prom, and everybody
Oh,
dresses
wow.
up. But this year we're calling it Widow's Promise, and it's all
Oh,
about
I
God's
love that.
promises to widows. Yeah,
Yeah.
one of the girls had a dream about it. I was like, that's
Oh,
from God. We're going with
cool.
that. And
Yeah.
so
That
that
is so
whole
cool.
night is going to be about all the promises God's made to widows. And in fact, there's this talk that I do, and here's the very short version called You Are Chosen. It's actually a chapter in my book. And when I was at a grief retreat 3 months after Luke died, God gave me a vision. And basically, I was brought back to Luke's deathbed. I was on the ground crying, like wailing, like in a place I've never been. And all of a sudden, I had this vision of Jesus putting a crown on my head and
Mm.
saying, I chose you. Out of all the women in the world, I chose you to be Luke's wife and to walk
Wow.
with him till the end of his life. And this is a privilege. And before that, I had thought, am I being punished? Why did my husband die? And so that moment, it changed everything. So I'm going to give that talk.
Mm.
And then they're going to go into their small groups and they're going to get a tiara from
Oh,
their
that's
group leader
cool.
and talk about, they're going to tell them all the things I see in you and you are chosen and put a
Wow.
crown on their head. And then we're going to go get ready for the prom and everyone's going to have their crowns. And then we just dance and have fun.
That's
And
amazing.
it, yeah, it's God totally like the way he made it Widow's Promise this year. I was
Mhm.
like, oh, that's perfect. And it's just a big time of community because many of these widows have never met another widow like in
Yeah.
person, or maybe they've met one or two. But the goal was 100, but it didn't happen. We're going for 50 now. It's
Mhm.
the way we had to do it during the week, and so many people can't come. But I'm like,
Yeah.
it's gonna be what it's gonna be. So 50 widows are going to be there at least. There'll probably be more. And it's just a time of find them going, somebody gets it and God has not forgotten me.
Yeah.
Like I'm not forgotten. I'm not alone. And we're also going to do baptisms this year. Like we did in Stehekin, they're going to meet with our pastor beforehand and then do that. And yeah, it's just, I'm
That's
so
awesome.
excited. And like the widow leadership team, they're like my best friends. And like, we're so excited to do this. And every year I'm like, I'm never doing it again. It's so tiring. Then I'm like, let's do it again. As soon as it's over, I'm like, well, that was so fun. Let's plan again. And
Yeah.
so who knows what the future holds? I just tell them 1 year at a time. And
Yeah.
so yeah, that's a little bit about the retreat. And it's about water walking faith. And when we can't see where we're going, how do we trust? How do we get there? How do we do this life that is so hard? And it is heartbreaking, like just watching these women break down because many of them, like the majority, are less than a year out. Because those are the people who need the help the most.
Mm.
And so they are less. And then so those of us who have been widowed longer, we come around them. We also
Mhm.
do a panel where they can ask any questions they want. They send them in and then they can also ask that day. So that has always been one of their favorite things, just to
Highlight.
ask a group of seasoned widows, how did you handle this? What do you do with this? And we've had all
Yeah.
kinds of questions come up. I believe I also have someone that's going to be doing a breakout session about purity because that is really hard
Mhm.
after you've been married and then going
Right.
back in this crazy dating world. It's so different from than it
Mhm.
used to be. So we're going to be talking about that, just like real issues that widows are facing when they are, living this life. So, oh, we're going to do solo parenting. That's one. Blended families, because that's another thing.
Yeah.
Some of us are remarried with blended families or about to be remarried.
Mhm.
And so I just feel like we are able to cover all these different topics and, and just the way God provided this person from New Zealand who's an amazing worship leader. And God had just spoke to her and said, she did this like all before her husband died, like, or before she got married, she was a worship leader and she'd come to the US and do things. And God just said to her, you're going to get back into worship and it might be in another country. And then she sees my
Wow.
post and responds to it. And so it's
Wow.
just amazing. I'm just
I
completely
love how
amazed.
God works.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's a little bit about the
Oh my
retreat.
gosh,
And
that's
that's
awesome.
October 5th through 8th that we're having that. And we do still, depends
Is
on
it
when you
still
release
open?
this. Yeah, so I was going to say we do still have spots left. And it's
Okay.
widowgoals.org/retreat is where
Okay.
you can find all the information. Yeah, we'd still love to have people. It's going to be an amazing
Yeah.
experience. What
Okay.
can I tell you one more God story that's so
Yeah.
crazy? Okay, so about 3 weeks ago, when a bunch of us went to Lincoln City's beach in Oregon,
Mhm.
we decided to go on a hike. I mean, all the timing has to be God. So we go on this hike where we're at the beginning of the hike, and there's this couple coming out, and to be silly, we just clap for them, like, "Good job, you finished your hike." The
Mhm.
woman has a cross on her hat. We start talking to them. They're this couple from Mississippi who are just traveling all through Oregon, and we
Wow.
tell them about we're all widows, and she's like, "My best friend is widowed,"
Oh, you're
and
kidding.
she ended up, long story short, she went home and told her, and the best friend and her friend are now registered for the retreat. And I'm
Oh
like,
my
God,
gosh.
only God. Because
Yeah.
Yeah,
this woman
that's
would never know
amazing.
about the retreat if we hadn't met,
Yeah.
her best
And if
friend.
you hadn't clapped for them, right?
I know.
We might have never
That's
spoken to them.
I know one of the girls, we have a chat, and one of the girls in the chat was like, and see, that's why we clap for people.
Yeah.
Because
You
if that
know,
wouldn't have happened, she wouldn't be
yeah.
coming. So,
That's the coolest thing. That's that constantly being ready for God to do anything.
Mhm.
You know,
yeah.
seeing every situation and realizing He's constantly ready to do those things everywhere we go. That's
Hmm.
powerful. That is
Yeah.
amazing. I love
Hmm.
that. It's all the way here in Oregon. Well, we're not in Oregon, but
Yeah.
Close.
Oregon.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's just,
Uh,
it's amazing when I think about it. And I know each one of the women, like they have different stories of how they found. Last year, we had two girls, they found me on TikTok. Like I did some TikTok videos and they were brave and signed up from a TikTok. Like, yeah. And I'm sure that we'll have a few more, like when we ask them, like, how'd you hear about this? It's always random ways. Like,
I gotta tell you, Michelle, I after we met and then I started following you on some social media stuff and I would catch some of your posts and I told Courtney, I go, oh my gosh, Michelle is so good at filming herself and all these silly things and living life. And I said, I'm so not good at that. I got to work on it. So you inspired me.
oh,
And
thank
so
you.
I love it. I love when yours come across my feed and usually you're having great facial expressions and you're doing silly things, living life. And I love that too,
Oh,
because it
thank
shows the
you.
joy in you.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Thank you. I
Yeah.
mean, I think that's one of the biggest things that I learned is to carpe diem, like live each
Yeah.
day to the fullest because you don't know how many days you have. In fact, Joel, my current husband, told me that's what attracted him to me. One of the things is that
Mhm.
I just was like, let's do this. Let's live life. Let's just like enjoy every moment because
Yeah.
I know that it's not guaranteed. I've lived
Yeah.
that firsthand. My husband
Yeah.
died when he was 42. And so I know that you don't know how many days you have. And so you're just living life. And I mean, I feel like I'm in a completely different world than when Luke was sick. I mean, like whole different life because I was his caretaker, excuse me, and it was just a really hard life. He was sick a lot. And so
Yeah.
now to have this life where my husband's a pilot and we get to fly places and like it's just a whole different world. And he totally supports everything that I'm doing with my ministry,
Yeah.
which some people don't understand. They're like, he's okay with you talking about Luke? I'm like, yeah. He wanted to know about Luke because Luke is part of who I am,
Yeah.
and he
And part
supports,
of your kids. Yeah.
and he's not like threatened by anything. There are men out there who can't handle dating a widow because we're always going to talk about them. We're always going to have pictures,
Yeah.
but it takes a strong man to be like, no, I'm good. Like, I know
And
that you love me. And yeah.
I can speak to that because I even told you on the boat and talked to Joel because I
Oh,
was
that's right.
so amazed at I was very impressed with him, of
Mhm.
his compassionate heart and how much he supports you and stood for you, and was just like, you could tell he was prayerful. He was willing to serve you while you were serving women. And um, it's probably part of the writer in me, but I was watching him a lot, watch you.
Oh.
And then I got to tell him, when he was up there, just thanked him for his ministry in your ministry, because
Mhm.
you get to do what you're doing at even greater levels, because he's so beautiful at supporting you. And it was so easy to see. And it really blessed me, to
Mhm.
watch him love you that way. Yeah.
Yes, yes, thank you.
Yeah. I have a side question, but Courtney, do you have anything you want to say? I don't want to overshadow you.
No, well, I guess it was really fun listening to you talk about your retreat, your upcoming retreat in October. You could just, you're like glowing just talking about it, and you can just see God working through you and everything that you're pouring into these women. So it's really special. And I really enjoyed listening to you talk about that
Thank
and just
you.
everything you are giving to all these other women. Really
Thank
special.
you.
Yeah, it makes us excited,
Yeah,
for
yeah.
you and just what
Hmm.
God's going to do. Yeah.
Hmm.
So my side question is, you mentioned it briefly when you were given the explanation of what all the cool things you guys are going to be doing at your retreat. And so I want you to share some about the learning how to date,
Hmm.
um, when you're a widow.
It's hard. Yeah, because most are like in their 40s and we haven't dated since our 20s and there was not all the technology. There wasn't even texting when Luke and I got together, right? It's a whole different world. And then all of a sudden there's all this technology. It's excuse me, definitely difficult. There's a lot of guilt in the beginning
Mm-hmm.
of feeling like I remember the first time I even like hung out with a man by myself, after Luke died, I was like, this feels weird,
Mm-hmm.
um, I think the biggest piece of advice I give people is to let God write your love story. I've
Yeah.
seen it over and over and over, not just for widows, anybody, my kids, everybody, like um, to not be striving so much that you should really be working on being the best that you can be. um
Yeah.
in the meantime, that doesn't mean you can't do dating apps and all that. I did them, they're crazy. Thankfully, Joel and I went to college together and then we
Oh, cool.
reconnected over Facebook, and but not Facebook dating, it was just someone you might know, and he showed up in my feed, and it was all totally God how all that came together. um but to be patient, and I tell people, they're like, well, how do I know if I'm ready to date again? I said, well, are you feeling sick to your stomach about it and it makes you feel horrible? Yeah, well, then you're not ready. Because that was me in the beginning. I'm like, nope, not ready. Because you do feel like you're cheating, if you're not
Yeah.
ready. And then you have to be like, it's okay. My husband would want me to be happy again. God wants me to be happy. Like, I don't have to stay in this stuck place, and I can still honor both of them. This is how I explain it to people. So let's say you have a child and you love that child so much, you're like, I could never love anyone else this much. You have another child, you're like, I can. Your heart expands. It's the same thing
Mm-hmm.
with getting married again. Like, I love
Yeah.
Luke and I love Joel simultaneously. I can love both of them,
Yeah.
and so there is a way to do that. But it's definitely a process. And I used to say, oh, I'm only going to date someone who's widowed or whatever. Joel is divorced, which is a totally different thing. But finally, I said to God, you know what? I'm not going to put you in a box that it has to be this person.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell people when they're like, do they have to be widowed? No, it's whatever God has for you. It's about the person, not like their situation,
Yeah.
because yes, widows and widowers do understand that, but Joel can also understand it like without living it. He has a very different situation than me. But I think not putting God in a box and saying it has to be this, and like having whatever God has for you. And I have watched so many love stories. Widows' weddings are my favorite, and I get invited to a lot of
Oh,
them.
I bet.
And it's so fun just to see them so happy. And it's just an amazing process, but it has to be someone who understands your love for your late spouse and honors that. And find someone, number one, who loves Jesus. Because there's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people on Christian dating apps who say they're Christians. I remember one guy, I call him Hot Mom Guy because his profile shirt said, I love hot moms. That should have been a warning
Oh,
sign
yeah.
right there. Shouldn't have gone out with him. But I was like, so tell me about your relationship with God. And he's like, I go to church sometimes. That was like the
Oh,
extent of it. And I was like, okay. Like, there were so many. And then one guy, He's like, well, I want to date a Christian girl so it'll help me be a better Christian. I'm like, no, no, I'm not
Mhm.
going to be that for you. So, just keep your standards high too.
Yeah,
Like don't put them down for anybody, but be patient
amen.
because God really does. I have seen so many stories just like mine where they come out of nowhere. One of my really good friends, she married someone she went to kindergarten with, like they reconnected
Oh,
somewhere.
wow.
That's
It's
cool.
called, I interviewed a matchmaker on my podcast, and she said it's called the mystery in your history. And that's where a lot of it,
Okay.
like a lot of times you find like Joel was the mystery in my history. Like we were friends in college, but never dated. Luke, actually, my first husband, we went to high school together, but then I went to college and then we came back and reconnected. So it's the same thing as with Joel. And so, yeah, just be praying a lot about that, about who it's supposed to be. And it's an amazing journey. I always tell people enjoy it. It's really fun. It's
Yeah.
hard. It's fun. It's all the things. It's exciting. When Joel and I started dating, he was in Louisiana. I was here. So we had to do a lot of traveling and a lot of like, but it was always so exciting to see him. And,
Mhm.
um, and it's just, yeah, it's quite a process. So I guess that's a long answer to your dating question.
No, I love it. You gave so many great nuggets in there, and one of my favorite, my writer brain went, "Oh, log that because you're probably going to use that in a book," which was when you talked about that when you think, "Oh, I have this one child and I can only love that child," and then you have your second one and God expands your heart, and
Yes.
that was is a brilliant explanation of it, and I will probably steal that just so
I
you know
stole it from
somewhere
somebody else. I don't remember
we're
where I
just
heard it,
passing
but
it on.
yes,
But I
someone else
love
told me that.
instantly. I was like, "Oh, that's good." File.
Yep.
Um,
File.
no, that
Hmm.
was really good. And so we want to know before we get into the last part, we want to know what is some of your next journey. I don't know if you're ready to share about your
Yeah.
newest podcast or whatever. We would love to hear some of your new journey
Yes,
coming
it's
out of
actually
this.
changed a lot since I've talked to you, but it's all
Oh,
like in
wow.
the last couple days, it's become like solid where I know. So I was kind of in this place, probably when I talked to you, that I'm like, I'm kind of tired of just widow work. I'm kind of tired of like the grief stuff, but yet it's still here. But how do I reach the widows who've been following me for a few years who are like, I'm done with like, I don't want to look back anymore. I want
Right.
to look forward. And so I first came up with the concept. I have not actually done the podcast. It should be coming out very soon, but I came up with the title of the new podcast, which is Out of the Fog and Into the Light,
Mm,
Rebuilding Your Life When Everything Changes. And
I
so we
like it.
have this thing, widows call it widow's fog, that you're in a lot. You're in this fog. You can't remember things. But it's basically the fog can apply to anyone. And the light is Jesus. So we're coming out of the fog and we're into the light. We're going to rebuild. And so rebuilding your life when everything changes reaches everyone. Divorce, death, loss of a job, like anything. And so from there, I kind of created a framework for what I want to do. It's basically the bridge between the widows who are ready to, and then coming over to this new space, which is going to include people who aren't just widowed. Because it was actually Stahikin that helped me realize this, that my ministry can reach so much more than just widows because there are only
Yeah.
a few widows there. But yet, so many people told me that my story helped them. So I'm like, okay,
Right.
this is bigger. And
Hmm.
so I'm going to be doing the podcast. I'm also going to be writing a book with the same title, Out of the Fog and Into the Light, Rebuilding Your Life. And I'm going to be using this framework, this 5-step framework, which is called Again. You can't go back, but you can live again. And again is going to be, let's see if I remember these. It's like 2 days since I figured this out. A is acknowledge what you've been through. So we're going to talk about like grief and what you've been through. And then G is get to know who you are now because
That's
that's
good.
different. We can't ever go back. Okay, I won't remember the A. It's something to do with community, but it starts with an A. I can't remember.
Okay.
But it's basically about building. You need to build community. I is identify what you want now, and then N is like navigate your new life or something like that. So
Mm,
basically, I'm going to take everyone, all my podcasts are going to align with those, different topics within that.
right.
And then I'm going to start coaching through with that as a coaching thing. And
Mm,
then I'm also going to create courses and probably retreats. We're going to call them
that's
again
awesome.
retreats.
That's
Yeah, and
awesome.
so it's kind of just a way for those widows who are tired of looking back. Because after a few years, I usually lose my listeners because they don't
Mhm.
really care anymore to listen to more, widow stories.
Right.
And I feel like God is bringing me to a place of a bigger audience. And so that's
Mhm.
why I wanted to start this whole new basically like a business basically in a new direction, a ministry
Yeah.
where I'm able to help more people. And so that's kind of where I'm at with that. I'm just getting the podcast stuff together and
Mhm.
it changed from where I was even a few months ago. So I'm very excited just to see where I'll go with that and more speaking opportunities and to write the book. And then there's another book I want to write called You've Got the Wrong Girl: How to Survive the Life You Never Expected. And that came from, I talked about it in
Yeah.
Stehekin about feeling like when Luke was dying, like, you've got the wrong girl. I can't do this. And so I'm like, so many people can relate to that
Mhm.
title of
Mhm.
like feeling like I can't do it. So that was going to be my next book. But now that I'm doing this out of the fog, I'm like, I want to make a book to match this framework and then I'll go
Right.
do that one. And
Yeah.
so lots of projects always out there. I'm always thinking about all these things that I can do. And like I have a private network for widows right now. I mean, I have my Facebook one, but a very small private one that people pay for just a little bit a month. I'm going to do the same thing for my Again stuff, my Out of the Fog slash
Cool.
Again
Yeah.
network. So yeah, lots of plans for building that into something because I could see it being retreats that include not just widows. Because I
Yeah.
always hate that I have friends who aren't widowed and they're like, I wish I could come. And so I'm like, now I could have something that any of my friends could come to and
Hmm.
anyone, because there's a lot of things in divorce that are similar. You're rebuilding in a
Very
lot of the
similar.
same ways.
Yeah.
I've seen that with, Joel and with other widowed friends. Like there's a lot of the same grief. And
Hmm.
so creating a framework where anyone could come and benefit.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to see, where that goes in the future.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, and I was amazed, because the theme of water walking faith in Stehekin, two of you speakers were widowed, and then the other one had gone through, physical trauma, and so it was interesting to me because my job was prayer, and so but so many of the women that we prayed with, God had wanted to break grief off of them. Not every one of them was a widow, but all of them, so many were dealing with like really like diabolical, it, caught in a vice grief.
Yeah.
And through all of your guys' stories, Holy Spirit used all of that to really break up those things. And so when we began to pray for these women, we watched them completely get set free. Some of them, one gal hadn't smiled in 10 years.
What?
10
Wow.
years. I
Wow.
know. And her friends came up to me crying, telling me, thank you
Oh,
so much for how you prayed. And it
Mhm.
was because she had lost her husband, but she had been capsulated in grief, that she had the spirit of grief and she couldn't get out of it. And through everything that you guys were doing, God just moved on her heart. And then it just took prayer and God just freed her. And
wow.
those are the things you want to hear.
Yeah.
Yes, that's
Um,
amazing.
and so your story and all you've been through, it makes so much sense that God would take you into a new season to expand.
Hmm.
Mhm.
It's pretty powerful.
Yes, yeah. And I feel like I was like, I don't want to leave the widows, but I want to do this. But now I feel like I'm in a good place that I'm going to continue my widowed podcast, possibly the retreats. I'm not sure. I've got my books and my podcast. I have over 5 years of podcasts. It's all out there still.
That's amazing. Hmm.
Yeah.
And so I know that it's going to continue on. And then I can also step into this new thing, but while serving the widows that are ready to come there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In what way can our listeners today be involved or support you?
Mm, yes, definitely praying for our widows retreat. That's huge. And if they're interested in financially supporting so we can have more widows come to the retreats and things like that, if you go to widowgoals.org, there's a donate button,
Okay.
and it's all, deductible. And so that's one way they can do it. If you know someone widowed,
Mhm.
um, you can tell them about my podcast, Widowed Too Soon, or also you could purchase the book Widow Goals, which I'm sure we'll have a link to. It's on
Yeah.
Amazon. That can help them.
Okay.
And ask your pastor, how do we support
Mhm.
widows? That's
Yeah.
something huge you can do, and just listen.
So can you share how local churches can bring widow goal support programs to their church?
Yes, you can go to widowgoals.org
Mhm.
/support program, and
Mhm.
it literally has a video your pastors can watch. So just ask your pastors,
Yes.
how do
That's
we support
amazing.
widows? they don't have anything or they want more support, send them the link and it has a
Hmm.
video. And then I even have discounts if on the books and all of that if
Mm.
churches want to order them in bulk.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so that's a way to support them. But definitely praying for widows and reaching out, like normalizing that it's okay to talk about their spouse because actually we want to talk about our spouses and people think it's
Mhm.
going to make us cry, it's going to be horrible, but ask them about like what are some of your memories of your spouse? What, don't be afraid to talk to them. I think for me, one of the hardest things is people would pretend nothing had happened because they didn't want
Mm,
to feel awkward.
yeah.
And I would sometimes be like, I don't know if you know, but Luke died. And I remember this one woman, she was like, yeah, I know, I'm sorry. But I was thinking, why didn't you bring it up? Just bring
Yeah.
it up. Like, we want to talk about it. So don't be afraid. Here's
Yeah.
another thing I tell everyone to do. The hardest days are the like anniversary of their death and then
Hmm.
also like your wedding anniversary. For me, those are the two hardest. And I was shocked how many people did not remember. But now it makes sense
Really?
because it's a date just for me. They wouldn't remember. So I tell
Yeah.
people, put it in your Google Calendar, whatever you use to
Yes.
remind you. My
Mhm.
best friend who was there with
Mhm.
me forgot on the anniversary. And so I
Oh,
told her
wow.
that was really hard for me. She never forgets now. It's in her calendar.
Yeah.
Do
And
you
so
know?
that's
If you look in my calendar, you will see I have another one coming up of a friend of mine that lost her husband several years ago. I put their birthdays in there to remember to
good job.
text them. I put their anniversary. I put the day
Oh,
they
good.
died. Yeah, I do that because I had a sister-in-law that was murdered, and that's a whole nother
Mm.
animal. And so with my brother-in-law dealing with that and us, our loss and just the awfulness of it. And I know how many people didn't know what to say when we were present
Right.
and they just would turn around and walk away. And you're like, okay, Al, you don't have to know what to say. You could
Exactly.
just
Just,
say, I don't know what to say, but I love you
Yeah.
and
yep,
hug them. And so
exactly.
that was what compelled me to be so diligent to remember. I'm really glad you brought that up because I think a lot of people don't think of those things.
No.
Right. I
And it's
remember
vital.
yeah, feeling so lonely. And so I actually created something where I collect widows and widowers' dates and
Mm.
send them emails. I mean, it's an automated system, but emails and videos that I
But you
created.
still
Yeah.
remember, yeah.
Yeah, and I have like 500 people on there, and they respond a lot and say thank you so much. Nobody else remembered,
Oh.
and I wish our churches could do that. Like
No
have
kidding.
it,
And they
you know.
could. Yeah, there's got
Mhm.
to be a way. You're right.
Joel and I have actually brainstormed about how could we take what I've done and bring it to the churches. Like, could we be like, okay, I have the information from this widow from your church. Here's her, make sure you reach out to her on this day. I'm not sure how to do all of that yet, but it would be
Mhm.
so nice if churches would do that and would reach out on those days to
Mhm.
the widows in their congregation.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
What resources do you provide widows?
The biggest one I would say is the podcast, Widow Too Soon. Basically, any topic. We've talked about it all in 250 episodes.
Mhm.
So that's a huge one. Of course, my book, Widow Goals. Another really great program is called the Grief Recovery Method. I've certified in that, and it's one of the best things. So I tell people to just look that up, and you can find
Mhm.
people in your area who do that. Grief Share is one that a lot of people like. No, some people don't like it, but some people do. I've heard great things
Yeah.
about it. But yeah, those are the biggest resources. And then, of course, what we've talked about, the retreats
Mhm.
and local areas. So, also for people listening all over, if you want to know for yourself or a friend who's widowed, if there's a group in your area, go to widowgoals.org / I believe it's local widow groups, or we'll make sure it's linked correctly. Even if you just go to the website, click on local widow groups, and it will have the list of all the states and countries we are in with links to their Facebook pages.
Um,
So that's how we collect our widows is through Facebook.
yeah.
Um, and we do private groups. So it's public that anyone can find it, but only private can see what's in it.
Okay.
And so when I have a new leader, I recommend that they, put it all over their Facebook, go to their city's Facebook and say, hey, I've got a local widows group. Here it is. And then I put it on my website. And then I also put it on my 13,000 people group so that people can find them.
Uh,
And so that's kind of how we grow and how people find out about us.
wow.
Yeah.
Did you ever envision this like going into other countries?
Actually, I have. I've always been a
Did
big
you?
visionary and big
Yeah.
dreamer. And I actually so when I started Widow Goals, I reached out to
Mhm.
every pastor in the area. I heard back from like two. And it's very disappointing. I met with one of them and he was my biggest supporter. And he would say, you don't know how
Mhm.
big this is. It's going to go all over the world. Now, unfortunately, he
Oh, good. You
died.
need to.
Like,
Visionary though. Yeah.
yeah, he passed away, and
Mm,
I have not been able to get in touch with his widow. I have tried because he would have loved this for her, the support, but he was the one who got me to dream. In fact, it came back to my mind the other day, like, wow, as we're going into Australia, and we've been in Canada for a couple of years and possibly New Zealand soon, and just that this could be something, to reach so many people. And it's crazy how God doesn't waste anything. Like everything that I've learned in my life from being a teacher, and then I was in network marketing for years, which is all about systems and duplication and all these things. Like, and I was my favorite part. I didn't like sales, but I liked building teams. And that's literally what I do is like, I'm just teaching
mhm.
them to do what I do. It's so
Yeah.
easy. Like I just
For
created a
you,
system.
because it's a
Yeah.
gift.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, I have a system where I have all the videos. So they just, once somebody
Mhm.
signs up to be a leader, they go in and they watch the videos and it tells them how to set up your page, how to do this. And then we do once a
Yeah.
month calls with the other leaders so
Cool.
they can get ideas from each other. And I get so many great ideas from the other people because
Mhm.
they think of things
Mhm.
that I've never thought of. One group, they went together to a smash room where you go and you just smash
Oh
things.
yeah.
And I was
Yeah.
like,
Uh-huh.
that's a wonderful idea for widows.
Right. Get
Yeah,
the
we went.
frustration and anger out.
Yes. We went
Oh.
axe throwing one time. Like we've done really fun things
I like axe
together. And
throwing.
so anyways, I get great ideas from the other leaders across the country and what they do. And it's been amazing to just watch it. And my favorite thing is pouring into a baby widow to someone who's new. I'm thinking specifically of a woman who came to me 4 months after her husband died, and I took her through my program and another one. And she went on to start her own group, and she is our retreat coordinator for this retreat. And
Oh
she's only about
wow.
2 years out, and she has just
Wow.
stepped into this
Wow.
leadership and then watching
That's
her pour
amazing.
into other people. So it's like
Hmm.
it's a ripple effect. You pour
Yeah.
into
Yeah,
someone who pours into someone who pours. So it's so much
absolutely.
more than just my leaders because they're
Yes.
producing leaders and they're
Yeah.
producing leaders. And like again,
It's
it's like
exactly
network
how God
marketing concept.
designed it. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's very awesome to see the duplication that's happening.
Mhm.
And every time I think that I'm like, okay, I'm done with this nonprofit or whatever,
Yeah.
it just keeps going. And I'm like, okay,
Mhm.
I'm going to keep going as long as God wants it to keep going. And I feel at peace about expanding it at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
Do you have something you want to say to our listeners before we close in prayer?
Mm. Okay, one of my favorite phrases that I teach people is, well, first of all, here's the concept in the phrase
Mhm.
that you should never stuff your grief or your feelings or
Mm,
anything like that because you have to feel it and to heal it. So, what I always say is,
mm.
what we feel, God can heal. What we
Mhm.
Amen.
feel, God can heal. And where that came from, my grief counselor used to say to me, to all of us, like, what you feel, you can heal. And I said that for about 2 years on my podcast. And I felt like God said, no, 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 I heal it. So now I say,
Oh, good.
what you feel, I can heal. God can heal. And
Yeah, that's
so
good.
whatever you're going through, doesn't have to be death, any kind of grief, any change in the pattern of your life is grief.
Mhm.
That's
Mm,
basically what it is. So probably every listener is going through grief currently or has gone through it. And so I
Mhm.
want to encourage you to feel it. Don't stuff it because you want to let God heal you. So what we feel, God can heal. So that's what I
mhm.
like to leave with the listeners.
Yeah, that's good.
That's good.
Yeah, I was just thinking, Courtney, on the fly, you don't even have to cut this out. I was
Mhm.
thinking probably need to run this on both podcasts because this
Yeah.
is so good.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're gonna run it twice on two different podcasts because
Okay.
this is good. Everybody needs to hear this. Uh,
Mhm.
thank you so much,
Oh,
Michelle,
you're
for
welcome.
just sharing your heart, giving us your time,
Oh, you're welcome.
which I know is huge. I know you're a busy gal.
Mhm.
I love that. I love when I catch your videos, like I said before. But just thank you so much. The last thing I want to ask you to do, will you please? I know that in your heart, God's probably already been stirring you to all the people that will be listening to this, and even years down the road, which
Hmm.
I love. That's the thing I love about these
Yeah.
recordings is that you can
Yeah.
keep watching them, even if it was 10 years ago, you know.
Yep. Hmm.
So if you would pray for them, we would love that.
All right. God, I just thank you for again for the gift of technology that we can be here today and speaking to all of these listeners, God. And I know that no one is listening by accident. And I just
Mhm.
pray that whatever they're going through, that you will go into the cracks of their hearts and heal them in a deeper way. God, I pray that they cling to you in their hard times, God, and that you cover them just like you've done with me with the peace that passes all understanding, God. I pray for joy to come in their lives today, that whether it's through a friend, a child, anything, that there will be some joy that enters their life. Maybe someone who also hasn't smiled in a while, God, that they will smile today, God. And I just pray that you give them the strength to face whatever they are facing. And God, I just pray that you put it on the hearts of people who are supposed to reach out to their churches and say, how do we support widows? That they will do that. And God, that there will be support for widows. And I thank you for Heidi and Courtney and for having me on today. And I just pray blessings over the podcasts and all the things they do. And we just thank you so much for being here and for all that you do for us. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much.
Yes,
All right,
thank
you
you.
can close us out, Court.
Well, yeah, like my aunt said, we just really appreciate you taking the time to come on to this, and we can't wait to see how many people this reaches, and
Yes.
we can't wait to follow you and see how your retreat goes in October. So,
Yes.
yeah, we're very excited, and so thank you so much, and we hope that all of our listeners have a good rest of their day. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.